Hello and welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast. We appreciate the listeners. You know, I'm a big proponent of giving back and the philosophy of giving back. I started donating to orphanages in Baja, Mexico in the mid 1980s as, you know, it was just really kind of more of a personal service, but I incorporated that into my businesses throughout the years. And if you follow along right now, I have an import wine and beer business called Baja United Group, which was established to generate long-term revenue for the orphanages down there, and we give a percentage of all of our sales. And some ask, you know, how come that's not a nonprofit? And the simple answer is that there's too many restrictions on nonprofits. And also, I believe in the sustainability of long-term business. So if I can create a business that is sustainable, we can give for a very long time. And that was the notion of that. We import the wine and the beer from Baja, Mexico, and we give back to the orphanages in that same neighborhood. So it's been a pleasure of ours since 2017. We want to keep growing. If you want to learn more, find us at bajaunitedimports.com. And the reason why I tell you that story, because I don't talk about it often on this show, is that I've got a special guest today, and his name is Linc Kroeger. Linc, thank you for being on the show.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know, your bio really stood out to me in the work that you're doing. In brief, it says that you're the president of Night Moves, a limiting profit company creating the next generation of elite technology professionals through extensive training and technology disciplines with an international focus on including Native American, rural, and urban underserved communities. And that part about the Native American really hit home to me, being here in Montana, and the things that we have going on with the Native Americans. So I wanted to have you on the show. I'd love for you to give us some background on yourself, you know, where you started in business and kind of the road that led you to where you're at today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, great. Hey, Jim. Yeah, so I grew up in a little rural town myself in Northeast Iowa, and I graduated high school back in the mid '80s, and I knew my career was going to be in technology. And fast forward 35 years later, I've spent my entire career in enterprise technology, meaning Seattle-based software company, Fortune 50, Fortune 500 consulting for their technology needs, Department of Defense. So years in that, and I started this project specifically. This was a few years ago around being in the consulting business. Most of my competition was offshore, right? Where when I was working with companies to buy our services in technology services, they would, our primary competitor was India, right, for the most part, but all over the world. And I was like, it's time that we could start doing this in rural communities and having a more of a focus on, helping those people who need the help the most. So I birthed that initiative under my last company, and spun it off about 2 years ago, originally as a nonprofit. So, to kind of say plus one to your story is the reason I couldn't run it as a nonprofit is my attorneys were just constantly telling me you can do that as a nonprofit. And I was like, well, if I can't do that, it's not going to work, right? It's got to work.
Yeah.
So spun this, and flipped it to a limiting profit or social benefiting model this year, and that's how we're advancing it. And it's just a much better fit.
Yeah, and I think people always assume that it has to be a nonprofit to be able to give back to others, and I don't think that they understand the restrictions that comes with that designation of nonprofit. And oftentimes your terms are so dictated, as you mentioned, you really can't do what your initiatives are, and it's unfortunate that that's how it's set up.
Yeah, also throw in, if you're doing something really innovative, unless you have like a major funder, your odds of succeeding as a nonprofit are probably not great if it's something that takes a lot of money, like what I'm doing. Because, I don't know if you knew this, Jim, but foundations, the first question they ask you is, how long have you been an operating nonprofit?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have 4 years of runway as a nonprofit, they say, hey, well, you've got to have 4 years. And these are, I've met with probably 25 foundations worth more than 100 in assets each, and they all said the same thing. And I was like, well, let me ask you a question. Do you really see, Native American, rural community, Black and brown populations in the inner city? Do you really see their lives getting better, at least fast enough? And I've never heard a yes to that. And I said, well, if there's no way for for nonprofits to get for innovative new ones, right? You've got the cure to cancer, or you have some way to come in and innovate. There's no funding mechanism to support it because these foundations are so focused on, short version is, rich people take their money to foundations. So people just don't come to the right and say, hey, because, everybody's chasing rich people for their money.
Yeah.
And they can say, hey, go to my foundation. Well, and then the foundations, they don't want to make any risky decisions, because if they make a bad decision, then the rich people stop donating to their foundation. So you've got this system where nothing innovative can come through as a nonprofit. Again, if you're doing a food bank that you need $50,000, that's very different than fundraising something that takes 2 million to launch. So just, I don't know if you'd heard those stories before of the nonprofit system is just not for, transformative, innovative, game-changing approaches.
Yeah, and also when you think about innovative, oftentimes those are the projects that really get the job done. And without some sustainable backing, are they going to last 4 years to be able to be considered by a foundation? Those critical years could be the first 2 years, to really make a difference. So it's interesting how these things work against one another. And once in a while, something pushes through and we see some success through that. So, I'm just curious, what enticed you to make the selection of the communities or the organizations or demographics that you decided to help ultimately?
Well, I mean, the answer to that's just too simple from the perspective of, if you look at, inner city, you look at Native American, you look at rural, that's our big three areas of really, just we aren't moving the needle there. I'd say the next two that are on the radar would be people with disabilities and veterans coming out of the military. That's not our direct focus right now, but I hope it is within the next 18 to 24 months. But it's just the people that need, and these are people that the capability is there. They just don't have the opportunity, right? And that's the key. If you're really going after poverty, you're going after economic development, you're going after, helping people release their potential in their lives, is if they just need opportunity and some help up, right? That's what we provide to the community.
Yeah, talk to me about that help up or that opportunity, because I think that's the most important component. Oftentimes in these communities, there's so much hopelessness, they don't know where to go, right? And so where is that help up and that opportunity?
Yeah, so I've again in 35 years in the technology industry and working for big companies, there's a great and sincere push for diversity and inclusion, but really companies really struggle at actually being able to do it right. You look at DEI initiatives and DEI programs, it becomes a lot about internal training, and it comes, to actually increase your diversity. It's more about just moving people between companies that are already, of diverse people that already exist, right? So it's more competing for the same resources, but companies really don't have a great mechanism to actually advance diversity. So I saw these patterns, and I also saw, you don't need a 4-year degree in computer science to be successful in computer science. So, the core of our program, Jim, is that we actually have a training program that our graduates are better prepared than 4-year computer science graduates. We're not a code camp, and I'm not, not trying to knock code camps, but it's still about a 3-year time period to get through our full program. We just start younger, right? Whereas most code camps are 4 to 6 months, and are well below a 4-year computer science degree as far as preparation. But companies will hire our graduate and say, you just saved me $25,000-$35,000 because of all the orientation and attention I would have needed to give a 4-year computer science graduate to get them up to speed. Because our people literally, get hired and say, point us to source code, point us to this, and they're writing code their first week. And I mean code that's scalable, that's secure, right? That's all the modern approaches at how you build software from a software craftsmanship perspective. So the way we work with the community is we will work starting there. Typically, most states in the school system is, they can start doing something vocational their junior year, but we'll work with the school and whatever there it is. So by the time they're juniors in high school, we'll get them taking actual software development courses for them to discover, is this for me?
Mm-hmm.
And why we focus on high school is, if you're looking at a 1 to 1.5 million shortage of computer science workers in this country, right, every year, just in the US. And if you're going to tackle that, like I live in Iowa, and in Iowa, the average age of someone who attends a code camp, right, that mid-career person who's saying, hey, I should have thought of this earlier, is 36 years old. So, if you're not getting people interested by the time they're 18, it may be another 18 years before they are interested, right? So you're not going to make a big dent on that, the need of tech talent. And also, if you want to get a more diverse population, start sooner too, right? And have all of the support strengths, which I know we don't have time to talk about all those wraparound services and all the support that it takes to help people, especially at-risk youth, of, how do you help them through this? So what we want to do is we want to get them engaged in high school and taking the courses, seeing if it's for them, getting them through. We have 7 courses that they take that they can knock them out while they're in high school, or maybe 6 months after high school. And then we have a core program that's 6 to 9 months long, that's fully immersive, where all they do in our full program is create real world solutions, right? So there's no, imagine building software product that is to the standards of a Google or Microsoft of what they would build. But what they focus on, this real world. So when somebody, in college takes a course, they hand in their code for their program for the professor, they grade it and throw it away. Not a lot of heart in that, right?
Right.
I mean, they're doing it to learn and to get a grade. In our program, we focus on creating technology innovations that benefit society, meaning whether it's, sex trafficking or homelessness or ending hunger or disaster relief, any 501c3 mission, our student teams will be creating production code that would be as if you went and hired a consulting company to build it for you and maybe pay $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for it. But then we'll deliver that to the nonprofit at no cost to them, as a way for our students to actually learn how to build commercial software product.
Interesting. Let me ask you something. You've been given some recognition by U.S. Congressmember Ro Khanna, as well as the Governor Kim Reynolds there. How does, I'm looking at, considering Montana being a little bit selfish here, I'm connected with a lot of our political figures. How does a politician approach you to help make a difference within our rural communities and your programs? Or how is it, how do you guys figure out who you're going to work with? Is it broad spectrum, open to anybody, or is it very specific?
And people can look at the nightmoves.org website, and it's night like a chess piece, not like the Bob Seger song. And we actually have on there what we look for in a community. And again, we want to partner with a community, and it's not just some online program, right? So imagine, I think you're in Kalispell, right?
Correct.
Montana.
Yep.
So if we were in Kalispell, our mission would be, let's create 15 to 25 high-paying jobs every year. Let's put that machine in. So every year we're creating those jobs where people can stay local. And we actually so what's unique about our program is we're not just a training program. We're a program that trains. And then since our program is such a high quality, all of these employers are reaching out to us saying, hey, you can produce better than 4-year computer science talent. And, how do we get on the list to hire your graduates? And by the way, these are companies that if it is a rural or Native American community, they don't request or require them to relocate. We only set those communities up with employers. So we bring the employer to our graduates, right? And give them a job guarantee that if they don't get the job after the program, if they meet our criteria, then it doesn't actually cost them anything. And by the way the cost is structured is after the person completes our training, they then spend 6 months working on consulting services for our clients, right? And this is back to why we're a limiting profit company. You can't do this as a nonprofit. We actually are these big companies are our clients that we do services for. And when people graduate our program, they spend 6 months working for us and they'll make like $15 an hour. But the way that we pay off their $20,000 in training costs that just got incurred is, instead of us pocketing that money for profit, we take it and pay off their training costs. So imagine you're, in Kalispell, and you're 20 years old, approximately, maybe 19 when you complete our program. By the time you've completed all of our training and then working as a consultant for us for 6 months for our clients, then you get placed with your eventual client, which could be, your eventual employer, which could be us, it could be another company. But our mission is to create a diversity of employers in an area, right? So you don't have one employer hiring all these people that decides, for whatever reason, they get acquired or whatnot, right? We want to have 15, 20 employers in a region, so you've got that employer diversity. But you're 19, 20 years old, you start that job, you're making 60,000 a year, and you have no debt by the time you're actually with your eventual employer. So it's a incredible opportunity. And just one note on, I'm sneaking in something here for Native American, is one of the reasons this is so powerful and well received by Native American tribes and communities is, we're typically, with Native American communities, they have no way to receive this training, right? So we can offer the whole thing in a box. We bring it to them, and then we bring the employer to them, right? And because Native American communities, and you're probably familiar with this with your higher population in your area, is Native Americans don't want to leave their tribe, right? I mean, you might have an entire people group with just 4,000 people left, and they'll always tell me, Linc, we're Native American, that's true, but you need to understand, right? There's Navajo and Cheyenne, there's 374 tribes, and we're all different people groups. And if we leave our tribe and go to college, they don't come back.
Right.
So tribal leaders actually encourage their young people to stay, right? Because they want to keep their people group. But to just so you understand the reception of the youth. So normally, let's say I was in Kalispell and we were sharing this potential, this opportunity and this potential with high school students in Kalispell, or pick a community, is we would get 30 to 40% of the say juniors in high school to say, you know what, I'm really surprised. I had no idea that a career in technology was interesting to me. I'm interested now that I understand it. And what do I do next? And then we get them to sign up for that software development course the next semester. And then they get to experience it and see if they like it. So in a normal rural community, we'll get 30 to 40% of all the students, which is absolutely off the charts of any response I've ever heard to say, I'll take a software development course, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll get 30 to 40%. Our last Native American tribe that we presented to all their 8th through 11th graders. 58% of all of their students said if they had this opportunity, they'd take that first class and see if it was for them. Now think about that. 58% of an entire tribe's population, 8th through 11th grade, saying, I'd take a software development class. And I didn't even know what software development was, right, a day earlier. And 48% of those were women, young females in 8th through 11th grade. So the youth get it. They see, hey, they want to be part of the digital economy and part of jobs that are modern, but they want to stay with their tribe and their family. So that's the big bridge that we bring to the Native American communities.
I love that. We just came out of a primary election cycle here, and I'm listening to the people running for office just scratching their heads, like, how do we help or do more for these Native American communities? Because they've been here in Montana hit so hard by the fentanyl crisis, and there's such a list of hopelessness within those tribes. To offer something that gives them a glimmer of hope for their future or an opportunity. As you probably know, most of of our veterans come from the military, come from the tribes here in Montana, because really that's their only option right now is going to the military. So I love what you're doing and what you're offering. And again, I'm being a little bit selfish with the tribal nations here. I realize that this is also very important for inner city and different ethnicities. But thank you for shedding some light on that as well.
Yeah, and just a thought too on if you have any leaders, local government leaders, happy to have a discussion with them and ideate how, because there's a lot of funding mechanisms out there too. For example, there's a new grant that's being released that's called the Rural Digital Equity um, Fund that's specifically for communities, your size and Native American populations. That it's a $2.7 billion grant. And the states right now can apply as of this month to do a planning phase of how they want to spend it, but they can use it on programs like this. And and our mission isn't to go get grants and things like that and donation, right? We can't take donations. We're not a nonprofit. But what we can do is if there is a state or federal grant that's available to get us kickstarted, then just to cover the costs of the program, we can implement, and then as we sell more of our services, then we sustainably own that going forward, right? So maybe we get help the first 3 years from some federal grant like that. And Montana is mostly rural, and I know the Rural Digital Equity Fund is the distributions are going to be going to the states or based on how rural their state is. And so anyway, there's money out there, and there's ways to accelerate this if state and federal leaders want to engage. There's always a way where we really want to do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, where there's a will and a way and a desire, you'll make it happen. So it would, again, love what you're doing. Where do you see this going? What's your long-term vision for this?
Well, I want to be in, see it in every state. And again, when I say every state, I mean, we always look to do a pairing implementation of a rural community, Native American community, and which are usually one for the first instance, and then an urban inner city area, right? And in fact, it's kind of interesting. Jim, who's been reaching out to me is churches, and they've been saying, when I say churches, I mean more on the inner city side, right? So think of like North Omaha, right? So I mean, for people who aren't familiar, North Omaha has a major, gang violence. So there's like I think 2 high schools in North Omaha where there's only a 50% African American male high school graduation rate. Now, do the future forecast on that, right? If only 50% are graduating high school, you're talking incarceration, there's not a good future in that. So the church reached out to me and said, we've got space in our church. We want to be an outreach to our community. Is there a way we could partner with you to offer the space to do the training? And, then we'll integrate with the community. And we said, well, not only that, we have a full coaching part of our program where we'll, take some of your volunteers and help them to become empowerment coaches and help, because the support structure you need on inner city is much more is deeper than we experience in rural and Native American communities. It's just different, right? Different environment. So anyway, all of a sudden I've had all these churches in these inner cities reach out. I don't even know how they heard about us, but in saying, hey, we we're in a in fact, I'm white, so I was in this North Omaha neighborhood at this church, and they said, hey, you know what? You need to come inside. This is not a safe area for you to be out here. And I was like, it didn't even cross my mind, right?
Yeah.
But so these are churches that are in these areas that we want to get to. Let's get yeah. I can talk about certain things, and I'm going to get more concise. But I was walking through a neighborhood in North St. Louis a few weeks ago, and if you're familiar with North St. Louis, right? I mean, it's very, it's an inner city area. I mean, you've probably seen, the Ferguson, the riots and what came out from there. But, I felt like I was in a third world country in the neighborhood I was walking through, right? You're walking down the street, a normal street, and you've got, glass all over the sidewalk. It looks like a building blew up. You've got 25,000 vacant lots. And you're like, this is the United States of America, and the only place I've ever seen in my life a human being eat out of a garbage dump, living in garbage dump conditions, was in the state of Washington when I was doing a tour with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we visited a Native American tribe. And, I'm just weeping looking at this picture in the United States of these people living in garbage dump conditions. We don't realize how fortunate we are, Jim, but how many people are not fortunate that we need to do something about to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, God, my heart bleeds equally for the things that you're talking about. You gave us some statistics on success rates with your programs. Do you have any and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any very specific stories about an individual or two that's gone through the program and you saw through to the finish line?
Yes. We had a young man come through the program who he was working at Walmart, stocking shelves, single mom, right? Small rural town in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
He finishes our program, and then he goes and he's interviewing at a $5 billion company. And the company, they said, well, we only hire 4-year computer science graduates, right? It's a finance company, ultra conservative. But we've heard good things about your program, and it's a diversity and inclusion program, and we're really focusing on that. So they called me and they said, well, hey, we interviewed your graduate, and we have 2 questions for you. Now, your graduate interviewed and competed against all 4-year computer science graduates. Now, how did your graduate, who was stocking shelves at Walmart a year ago, beat out every 4-year graduate of computer science 4-year degrees, technically and emotional intelligence? And second question is, how do we get 10 more? So he is thriving at his job. He's enjoying it. He loves it. And again, think about somebody starting the job that can actually do the job, right? So if you get your education versus our program is all demonstration based, right? You don't get a grade, it's not time based. It's a program where you graduate when you demonstrate you can do the job. And I mean every aspect of the job. So when we send you to an employer, you have proven to us that you're going to represent our brand of someone who can walk in and join a team and start building commercial software products, right, at a high quality. So, it's just so fun to see people to have that experience in their life, and to all of a sudden, he got this job offer for $60,000 a year, which to him was a lot of money, and they didn't require him to relocate. So,
Right.
that's just one example of something. And place equity is getting to be a bigger topic now. So just because you live in a rural community, you automatically have an issue with equity because, right, you're not near commerce centers. So poverty, drugs, meth, all these things and are problems. So racial equity is real, right? Place equity is real, and this is to combat those issues. And fortunately, computer science, the area is probably the easiest area for work from anywhere, right? Because, I mean, gosh, probably, I don't know what percentage it is, but a large percentage of companies have people working in India. If they can work in India, they can work in Kalispell.
That's right. That's right.
So it's pretty hard to argue. And the market's pretty much dictated, since there's over 1 million person shortage, that the workers want to do work from anywhere. So, work from anywhere, especially in computer science, I'd say it's here to stay, but it's been here for 20 years in this industry.
Yeah. By the way, going back to your story of note, as you mentioned earlier, your graduate has no debt. Those 4-year graduates all have debt, so he's starting a job $60,000 a year without any debt. Whereas if somebody else would have taken it, they'd be paying off that debt for a lot of years.
Well, not only did he not have debt, but I was fortunate that it was with the state of Iowa. And if I can ever get state money to help, and not make it myself, but to pass it on. So I was able to get a grant from the state of Iowa that while the individual was getting trained in our program, he got paid $15 an hour and didn't have to. He got paid $15 an hour. He got a new computer. He got like $2,000 in expense stipends to pay for his internet while he was there, because it was actually, kind of a get people to work kind of state grant. So,
Yeah.
Anytime we can get those kinds of grants and pay it forward, because the biggest challenge there is for mid-career workers, right? High school, this is pretty easy to focus on the youth, right? Because they're already used to, hey, I'm going to graduate high school, and if I go to college or do something, I have to pay for that, and I'm going to probably have to get a part-time job or something, right? They don't get paid to go to college.
That's right.
But for mid-career workers like you or I, for us to take a program that could take us, and you can take all of our prerequisites at night or weekend, right? That's easy. But our core program, which is, at least 6 months, that's a full-time Monday through Friday focus. So for us to just quit, or, for adults to just quit their jobs, that's not, that's the hardest barrier we have right now. That the best solution is for states to come up with, grants that could pay them even if it's $15 an hour while they're going through the training, to reskill, which is what it's about $25,000, all in to for them to come out of something 6 months later and now be a taxpayer the rest of their life, right? And start out at 60,000 a year. So that's something else that states can do to support a program like this, is just help the people that are because about 15% of our people that come through are mid-career transitioners versus more like 85% are high school. Sorry, I go in so many directions on you, Jim.
No,
there's too many details. I need to do better on the concisity there.
It's okay, and I appreciate it, because my mind is just swirling with thoughts. And matter of fact, when you look at the education system, and I'll use Montana as an example because I'm a school board trustee, a student basically costs the state $13,000 a year. Right. So if we can put a student through your course in 6 months at a $26,000 rate,
thank you for listening to today's show.
As opposed to them going to school for 4 years, we've just saved, half that admission fee. Right. And we've sent somebody off with a skill that they can apply immediately with the opportunities that you guys have. So really, it's a very, very affordable program as it relates to what we're already spending on students in the state of Montana. And I'm sure that students nationally are spending, being spent equal amounts of money. So I love where your numbers are at and what you're able to do in a short period of time.
Well, thanks, Jim. Yeah, and think of the cost of incarceration too.
Yeah.
Not that I want to go there, but that's what we're blocking.
When you're working on a state level, you mentioned that this particular student went through a state program. Who are you working with at the top? As an example, would you be working with the state superintendent who's in charge of education? Are you going through governmental policies?
It would, generally it's, probably workforce development. I'll say this too, the Department of Human Services absolutely loves us in states because, our whole mission is, supporting every area they support. Hey, how do we innovate those areas?
Mm-hmm.
And then also the community and workforce aspect of these, underserved or distressed areas, to bring the jobs, right? So human services departments love us, workforce love us, economic development, not so much, but they should. It's just the light bulb hasn't gone off yet with state government. I don't know how long that's going to take, right? Because most economic development is focused on, hey, I need to bring this manufacturer in that's going to create 100 jobs. Well, why wouldn't you instead want to bring somebody in who's going to pay about 40% more and create perpetually 15 to 25 jobs every year, right? But they're just not positioned to think about the new work from anywhere economy for the most part. I'm sure there's some good exceptions out there, but to answer your question, mostly workforce development and Department of Human Services in states, or just people that are active leaders that are just saying, hey, I want to bring this, right? And they want to reach out and start a dialogue around how could they do that.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to be respectful of your time. We've gone well over what I suggested we would talk, but this is, I'm passionate about this. You talk about a bleeding heart for something. There is a lot of people out there that need a leg up. I started the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate because of my passion for helping the youth, because there's a high suicide rate and a lot of depression in the United States amongst our youth. And so I'm doing what I can, but programs like this really add a tangible asset that they can have after several months of education that they can take into the workforce. So thank you for what you're doing. I will post your website and links in the show notes here. And we really appreciate your time today and sharing what you're all about.
And thanks so much for having me on, Jim, and for your mission.
Thanks, Linc.